Here I'm going to show how I turn the complex detail in the center of a baluster leg that's made up of this bead, cove, and bird's beak. There's a system I use to practice this that just takes a few different parting tool cuts that I can then repeat easily over and over on one piece of wood. I find this the best way to practice this technique because I create a series of moves that I'm going to make the same each time that I cut it. Here is the layout you see, and you'll notice I don't just put one mark where my parting tool is going to go. I actually define the width of the parting tool, and then later on you'll see that I use that width to actually become or help orient the details. It's very important to have that correctly positioned to get your different details to be the right size and to understand where they start and stop in relation to that parting tool cut. So here I'm just making the cuts and sizing each one down. You can do this all in the beginning, or you could do it as you did each one of these. And what you're going to see when I do these three different details is I'm going to take them to different levels of completion. Hopefully that way you'll start noticing the things that I do in the same order each time. I have to slow it down a little bit. I like to do my parting tool work a little faster than I like to do the actual shaping. Here you're going to see I'll start by removing the material that's excess above where this bead is going to be formed. And I'm going to take some away from where the cove is. I like to get rid of some of that excess material on the large underside of that vase. It can get in the way when removing this waste in here. And I'm going to leave this after just roughing out the two beads and removing the material from the cove. So now as I go on to the second one, you'll notice I do everything in the same order. Once again, removing some of that excess material from that first bead, taking away some of that cove material, but before I get too deep into it, I'm going to remove some from the bottom of that vase. And now I'll finish up that cove as far as the waste material goes. Now that I got that waste out of there, I'm going to clean up the bead, just like before. And here's where we're going to start to depart from what I did in the first section. I'm going to go and I'm going to cut that cove. I like to remove a good amount of material from the middle first before I start to try and define the very edges of it. And here's where I use that parting tool cut to help define one of the shapes, which is I cut that in half, the width of the parting tool. And on the top portion there, I leave it the full width. That's going to become the bird's beak. So I leave that area right there, the full width of the parting tool cut, and the portion at the bottom down here is about half the width of the parting tool cut. That helps ensure that I always have the same proportion on my cove. Now I'm going to come up with the skew and start to define that little bird's beak up top. That's where I'll leave that one. Now, once again, starting at the beginning, I'm going to come in, take care of the bead, take care of this waste inside the cove area. And if you're paying attention, you would have noticed there that I actually skipped clearing that material right there, which on the other two I did first. So I got a little bit out of step there, but not so much that it threw me off. I'll define that bead just like you've seen before. Now it's time for the cove. Repeating this kind of practice really helps out. You'll find your problem spots almost immediately because you'll never get past them. Once again, the bottom fillet of that cove is about half the width of my parting tool cut. Now comes in the skew to sort of rough out that bird's beak area. And now I'm going to turn it around and use the heel, and this is going to finally define all the other components except for the cove that you see. So I clean up the top of that big bead there, and now I'll come in and clean up the lower bead. and then the fillet. By practicing this method and these set of moves in the correct order over and over again, I found myself much more comfortable not only with making each shape, but making sure that they relate to each other the way that I intended.